it's the best of, most efficient way.
Yeah.
Let's continue there. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Are we recording?
Yep.
All right. Well, in the last episode, we ended off with two proposed use cases or / requirements. Well, maybe we'll just call them requirements from now on. Proposed to attack. And we had kind of decided to backtrack a little bit from the one path we were going, which was essentially going after more contentious stuff, towards maybe something that we all know we want, like arguments. So we have these two here, right? On lines 8 and 9, which is a user can declare that a claim differs from another claim according to an explicit distinction with a capital D.
I won't keep that on the shared screen because it's a shared document. I thought, but I don't know if we're doing diagramming right now, so maybe I should stop sharing. What do you think?
Or just show, because I think we just need to say which requirement we look at next.
Okay, so let me show this and make that the shared.
Yeah, good thing. And I think last time we said we use Bentley's probably or something.
Well, those are the two proposed. Anybody want to propose another alternative? If not, we can choose between those two. No. Okay. So then between these two, anyone want to make an argument for one or the other? Or do we go straight to voting?
I think we made the arguments last time. I think they're both valuable. I'm not going to go against Bentley's. I think mine is important, but so is his. So
let's go with Bentley's.
All right. Then that's it. We're going to number 9, which is now in progress. Our blender's going here.
I'll let you do it.
Okay. Sorry, I'm gonna. Okay, Bentley, do you want to say something about your requirement here?
No, I mean, it's not exactly well formed. The main goal is to start just talking about how claims exist in an argument, and we talked about reducing it down to support and not including the opposed requirement. But I can't think I have more than that. But I'm just curious on how people kind of see us composing claims and arguments.
Okay, I have questions. This is in a way what we talked about Friday, and I don't know if you have a view different from mine, but there's two, I hear two things here. The claims are part of the argument, like there's premises and conclusion, and that for me has nothing to do with support and opposition. And I don't know, like, and for me, support and opposition is there's an argument about a claim or about an argument. And that is, you could say that if the claim is a conclusion of an argument, yes, the argument supports the claim, fair enough. And maybe that's what you mean. Maybe that's the use case you're looking at. I want to be sure that's the use case you're looking at.
Well, so this did come up in the conversation last week. It did seem like the focus of last week was, you have is kind of disambiguating claims. It seemed to be the focus of it. When this one is saying, when you have an argument, I'm trying to think of how you said it, multiple claims, an argument. I mean, how do you describe an argument then? Because it sounds like we're doing something slightly different. Isn't that a collection of claims? And in order to be useful, isn't it some premises? I mean, it's not premises and conclusion. That What, that assumes that a premise is always pro the conclusion?
Okay, let me quickly go through that.
Because if we're just doing multi-premise claims, I don't believe in multi-premise claims. So,
Well, we can. Okay, that's interesting. I don't believe in single premise claims, but of course,
well, I'm not saying
we can use claim composition to. We've been through the
Yeah.
notion that we can model multi-premise with claim composition. Fair enough. But I think it
Yeah.
obscures things personally. Because
Well, okay, let's just go back to a naive argument. You know, someone makes a claim. Someone
Yeah.
says that's not true because X. And someone goes, oh, well, it is true because of X. And they talk about true, you know, these are things that support this claim and these are things that don't. So a standard debate. So
Yeah, okay,
how do
so-
we want to model that?
Okay. Should I go over how I do it without too many details? Because we went through that and I think it's something that can be said quickly. Like for me, an argument has a conclusion, the conclusion's a claim. And if I'm arguing for the claim, the conclusion is the claim. If I'm arguing against it, my conclusion would be the negation, which is a special case of logical variant, but you know, something that is a claim that is marked to be the negation of that other claim. Now, maybe there's other ways to do it, and maybe there's other logical variant. Maybe the conclusion is this claim is 70% true, but those are all kind of variants. The basic case is you have two arguments. One of them has as conclusion the claim, and the other one has conclusion the negation of the claim. So that would be arguing for and against a claim. That's how.
Okay. In the name of the process here, we're getting dangerously into, we want to be able to cover every case. And this use case has been written so generically as to open up all that conversation. So it might be interesting to just choose what is the simplest argument we can represent here. By doing it as an example. For example, a user states that let's take one of our concrete scenarios, essentially, to rebut.
Let's put that in description, maybe.
Yeah. And I like using Earth is flat rather than the Socrates example, because Socrates is arguing definitions and Earth is flat is arguing.
So it would be something like a user argues that the Earth, I mean, what would be the argument in this case against the Earth is flat?
I mean, it presumes that someone said the Earth is flat, and then the user argues that the Earth is not flat because.
Oh, you want to argue against it? Okay, so
it would be against
or
the
we
claim,
could,
right?
I would think it'd be better to model against, because I don't know, it is more complex.
Let's make an argument for the Earth is round. So we have the argument and support for a claim, and we can.
So let me just.
So a user argues you can sail completely around the Earth in a straight line as an argument in support of the Earth is a sphere.
Yeah, I would say travel rather than sail.
They simply say the horizon.
Okay, travel.
What?
You can see the bend in the horizon, therefore the Earth's flat. I think that's a common one.
Yeah. Sorry, you can say what?
That's a common argument of flat Earth, is that you can't see a bend in the horizon, so therefore the Earth is flat. Otherwise, it would be a curve.
I mean, we could choose something much simpler. We don't have to choose something so like scientific and based on.
Right, but I mean.
No, I think he wants an empirical versus analytical fact. So that's good.
You were asking for supporting arguments for the Earth is flat, and I know that that's one. And there's an excellent, by the way, in flat Earths.
I mean, we could do something at like a user argues that the table is brown in support of the claim this table is made of wood. Right? We don't have to get something so
real.
You know. Can we do that? Here, I'll type it.
Yeah.
Bentley,
Because
you're the one with the use
Oh,
case.
I just wanted to move away from talking about disambiguation and move to
Fair.
the base structure. And, you know, Mark, to your point, you know, your pattern is, well, I think we all agree, the most likely final outcome. I think following the process would argue that we would, from the bottom up, design something a little simpler.
Yeah,
Although I could definitely be wrong because we've already introduced some of what you just proposed. I don't know how far we got in the design, so, but that's where my thinking was heading, just to be transparent.
Let's work on having an example we all agree works.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know. The table is brown. I see it as weak. I think that we can travel straight, hence the Earth is sphere is a good one, but that's
The interesting with the table is brown is because it can be countered again to model that
yes.
later on.
But
It's cool.
what can we define what an example is that works? Because I'm a bit confused. Like, don't they all work? What's the problem here?
We're trying to find an archetypical case, and Bentley didn't like the Socrates because it was more an analytic fact than an empirical fact, and he wanted an empirical fact, which is legitimate.
Yeah, so I think this one or the sailing or traveling one direction is.
Felix had a good point that the problem with the traveling in straight line is a bit hard to counter with fact, though we could say nobody's done it yet. You know, putting ourselves in Columbus's era.
Yeah,
We don't have
I
to
think the table
like, stick
flat
to.
is good just because it's simple and,
Okay, let's go with that. Cool.
and
Yeah,
arbitrary.
this doesn't have to be like the argument that we base all our future use cases on. You can have a different one for each one.
Okay, good. So, yeah.
So I think Marc-Antoine suggested a diagram of how to solve this thing, this requirement.
Now, keeping with the process here, one of the objectives is to do the simplest model possible for.
Yeah. No, I agree totally.
Of course, we don't have negation in this one, so actually
we don't have negation.
Which is fine.
We don't even have necessarily that the table is brown is itself a claim, right? At this point, all we have is that basically a statement has been made in support of a claim is what's being added here.
Yeah. So the minimal would be something like, do we agree argument is a class, is a thing at this point? Can I just introduce argument in here?
It works. I don't.
Yeah.
We can change it later.
Okay. So argument, claim. We can have supports here as the name of the relation. I would say conclusion myself to be, because that's what I have here. I think this is aggregation, but I'm not wedded to that. Do we say there's a single conclusion? So that would be single here. Or is that?
We haven't said that yet.
Far? We haven't said that yet. Okay, good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's
So
just
it's
a claim support.
I would
That's
go ahead.
Isn't
Say
it
that
just,
again.
Isn't it just a claim supports a claim? That's all there is in the bottom diagram. There's no negation or whatsoever. So the only thing you can say is that an argument is a relation between two claims of one supporting the other.
Well, we don't know yet that an argument is a claim.
That's why I
I mean,
asked. Do we agree that there's an argument object, or do we keep with claims? I'm perfectly happy either way.
The two things I'll say about that is, first of all, yeah, it's ambiguous here. The way everything's been stated, there's no way to say one way or another. What's missing is, I think it's definitely clear that an argument has a sentence, right? So that's missing from here.
So my preference, now that I'm looking at it, and thank you, Marc-Antoine, for putting it down and throwing these things out. I'm kind of leaning towards starting with a claim supports another claim and just leaving out the concept of argument. Can support another claim.
So then let's rephrase, because in the here we had argument, we even had it with a capital letter. I was going to point that out, but I'm
the use case becomes a claim can support another claim then, right?
Yeah. I'm fine with that.
So are we done?
I think for now, what it brings up is the question of, what did we hope to capture that wasn't captured here, and what other requirements or use cases does that imply for the next iteration?
Yeah.
Well, then then it is the opposes. Now the phrasing of that, I don't know how to phrase it in an agnostic way where I'm not saying it supports a negation or opposes another claim. Those are two ways of saying the same thing that implies a certain design.
And I would argue that they're very different cases, and I do want to distinguish them. Saying another claim supports the fact that the table is not made of wood, that's one thing. Saying that the table is brown does not support the table being made of wood is a totally different thing. Like saying that this is an invalid support versus saying there's a support for something else.
Right. We could tackle that right now. That might be an interesting one to go for now, which would be another user
user,
or a claim, or I guess it doesn't have to be a user. A claim is created in opposition. A claim is created to oppose.
Maybe Timothy, you write yours.
You write and I write my version, and we'll discuss afterwards.
I'm thinking out loud.
And write instead. A user denies that.
We are treading yet again on modeling versus commenting on other people's models bound context. That tells me that I'll see how it goes. Similar to the other disambiguations I talked about last meeting. It's only getting more complex now that we have 3 many-to-many relationships.
So you think, okay, well, once again, you're saying that denying the validity of a claim is a separate bounded context?
I'm saying one use case is a user models that it supports it. Another use case is that somebody might disagree with the model of somebody else. And yet another use case is somebody might add reasons why they don't believe that it supports it. And then we come into the whole thing that an argument is actually a claim as well.
I think that's just formulation right now, because I guess we're all only in the modeling space right now, as far as I understand.
So I think, well, yeah, we'll see.
No, but Steve, I fail to see the bounded context here. For me, this is all part of arguing. The question that is this argument valid, that's part, for me, that's the same bounded context as this is an argument. This argument is invalid is the same bounded context as this is an argument.
So yeah, I disagree there, but I do agree with Tim's formulation, because it keeps it in the modeling realm, whereas your formulation doesn't. So unless to you they're the same.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Claim, because I'm speaking about users. Well, the other, Bentley's one also spoke about users. Oh, no, it didn't. Okay, fair enough.
Although I would
doesn't
say that I
matter,
don't know that Tim's dictatorship recognizes Stephen's concern about. So I would rather save that to Mark Antoine's meeting.
No, but
because I think that we solve that problem through a different way through going through this process. So bounded context is not a formulation of the agile methodology. It may be useful.
But according to the process, I'm just voting for Tim's formulation.
Okay.
I don't have problems with Tim's formulation, by the way.
I just don't know that they're. That's not. I mean, that's not. And I guess we're actually on discussing what the next requirement is, right? So isn't there one that just says, so I'm not denying that a claim supports another claim. Can't we just say the table is brown and it's like, it looks blue to me. I mean, or the table is wood, I'm sorry. And it's like someone knocks on the table and says, it sounds like metal.
And just paint it brown.
So yeah, but that's a different case, which is that a claim is created to oppose another claim.
Yeah, well, there's the case I suggested, and then y'all threw these in, I thought, as a way to explain that case.
But I'm saying there's even 3 cases here. One is saying brown doesn't prove wood. One is saying it's not really brown. And one is saying the knock actually argues against the sound, the knocking sound argues against wood. So these are 3 distinct things. One is attacking the premise, one is attacking the conclusion, and one is attacking the link between premise and conclusion in the original supporting argument.
Right.
So these are 3 very distinct use cases, and we need them all. But they're distinct. And I'm going to remove mine because I'll respect, though I kind of disagree, but I don't disagree totally. So let's make it user neutral. That's a request, and it's a request I can respect.
So then, yeah. Okay, so we have 2 proposed.
Claim is created, and claim is denied. Now, in the case where I'm saying the table doesn't look blue to me, I'm saying that's to me. So there's a user bias. So let's not go there. But I'm saying the table is not brown. Here, I'm not giving a reason. I'm just stating flat out the table is not brown. I'm denying the claim. I'm not giving an argument. Do you agree that this is a separate use cases?
Yeah, I don't know that I would allow that in the system. It'd be misformulated.
Okay, so that's interesting.
But we could talk about that, yeah. Well, and we can still think of a lot of things to propose, but the question is, what do we think's the next? What are we proposing as the next thing to hit? So I don't want to just start brainstorming a whole bunch of them.
The simplest might be a claim is opposing the original claim, like the table is brown.
So I think that a claim is denied like that. A user argues the table is not brown. Is something that happens, and so it should be included. It's something we can imagine happening. But how do they do that, right? And the way a user would normally do it is use it as an argument against, right? Somebody makes an argument against the table is brown. They say, oh no, I create a claim or an argument in opposition saying the table is not brown, right? We know that's not good argumentation, but it happens.
It's not invalid. Why is it invalid argumentation? I'm just curious here.
Because it doesn't. I would say let's table this discussion because it's not the next priority discussion.
Okay.
It's on the list. We could talk about it later. Let's talk about what the most likely thing to agree on rather than the least.
In regards, I thought we wanted to allow both valid and invalid argumentation, or am I wrong? So it doesn't.
I believe that as well.
At this point, is it? As long as
Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
I think that's unrelated to my complaint, but let's not dive more the wrong direction. So we have
Right.
3 proposed items. Do we want to just vote, or?
A claim is created to oppose another claim is the simplest of the 3.
I agree.
Perhaps simplest and least controversial. Should we go for that then?
Let's
Sure.
finish it off.
All right. So 19 is now in progress.
Put it out of its misery.
The 4th many-to-many relationship on claim. All we need in the system is claims.
Now, you know what's interesting? It may require 8, because when you're saying the table sounds like metal, you're saying the conclusion is it is metal, and there's something to say it is metal is incompatible with it is wood, but that's not a negation, it's incompatible.
So yes, that's all true. I don't know that, like, those are requirements that follow from this, but not necessarily an integral part of this. That maybe we could choose to not go down to that level of detail.
Right. It's something you might see happening next, right? But this is what happened: is a user was just like, oh, the table sounds like metal.
Yeah, well, I'm saying I cannot model this well without the notion of mutually exclusive, which is not yet in the model.
Well, let's see.
No, because somebody, what you would want to do next is propose something that says, yeah, somebody made this argument, and somebody else noticed that it implies a new claim. So a claim is created, the table is metal, mutually exclusive to the other claim, the table is brown. That's a separate use case.
The table is wood.
So a table's wood, sorry, table's brown. The table's brown, no, it's metal.
But regardless of all of that, I mean, that's what it implies. But the single first action is just the person saying,
It's
"Here's
not
a
true
fact that
because
opposes
it sounds like metal."
the truth." Yeah. So is that as simple as doing the same thing that Marc-Antoine did, but as opposes instead of supports?
Yeah, we need a new opposes relationship essentially, from claim to claim.
Oh, but is that happening? Okay? Sorry, I'm being
Distracted.
No, not distracted. I don't think that what we give is an opposition. I'll go as far as to say, if you look at the example, the table sounds like metal when you knock on it. It's not opposing the table is wood. It's arguing for metal. It's arguing for a contradictory claim. It's not directly arguing against wood.
So the implication is the person is fully saying, which wasn't written down, that the table is not wood because, and then it doesn't matter what the because is.
What I'm saying is
string.
What I'm saying is, okay, and what you're saying, which is perfectly valid, is that it doesn't have to be fully developed. And I'm saying
or formalized.
Or formalized. And somebody else would want to add the intermediate step of it is metal and metals is mutually exclusive with wood. But you could still say this is opposing that. Okay, fair enough.
If we want that feature. Now, later on, we may decide, but it sounds like that's kind of part of progressive formalization, right? Is allowing just to express the intent.
Okay.
I mean, that's interesting because I think we all agree we want progressive, incremental formalization, right? If we didn't want that, now would be the time to say, no. You can't just say something's not true. You would have to formally give an alternative truth. And that would be, in other words, it would interfere with this use case. We would say, no, we don't want the system to support somebody being able to say something without going all the way and proposing an alternative solution. But in this case, I think we all agree. So, and I'm throwing out some confusion here, but it's just, yeah.
No, good point. I had not seen it in that way, and I stand, I won't say corrected, but I stand chastised maybe, that I was having too rigid a view of this.
Okay, so then we all agree with supports and opposes for now as the solution to the.
For now, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then I think
I don't agree with is. I mean, yes, I agree with this, but again, what I don't agree with is that this is a good model at all. This is open for so much errors, and that, as I said,
it works. Yeah, I know you're struggling with it, but does it work for the use cases we have? That is, nobody's done it. Nobody's proposed an error yet as one of the use cases.
I think it's easier if you've done test-driven development, because when you're writing like a bowling scenario, the first thing is the score is 0, and it does nothing else. The test actually just says return 0, right? So it's completely useless code, but it passes the first test.
This is very much test-driven development type of practice.
Okay,
yeah,
I guess intuitively in my head I can write 50 tests that fail this simple model, and that's
right. But you've only written one test, and it passes the first test.
I already tried.
I'd also say let's write them.
Well, yeah, but you can't write them all at once. So you write them one at a time.
We're doing them one at a time.
Here I do have a methodology thing, is that a few times we've been through the process of saying, let's go for what we agree on and let's not go for what we disagree on. And I think this is where this constraint becomes counterproductive with test-driven development. If Stephen or I think this model will fail because, well, maybe that's controversial, but it needs to find its way into the process.
It does, but when does it find its way in the process?
Added, and there's already, like, in relation to negation and whatever, there's already money that I added there. That's when we started talking about the types of these relations, and a lot of that was like shelved for later again. And I don't know. I guess all I'm saying is I think the next use case we need to pick is one that relates to the constraints on these relations, because now we have 4 and getting out of hand.
Yeah, I agree.
Sounds good to me.
And I think, yeah, and I don't know if constraints are use cases, but probably they are. Like, probably you want to say, oh, it's impossible to have to oppose and support a claim at the same time from the same claim, for example. I think for me, the distinction between claim and argument, well, the distinction between claim and argument, maybe not, but the materialization of opposition and support is something into something else, is what we will tackle when we attack this one, 19. And so that would be my priority. And
the one I wrote
change things.
Claim in relation to negation was claims equivalent to a claim, which is a negation of a second claim, and also the negation of that second. Line 11 is the one that I personally think we should have done before the support and oppose, because it's
fair enough
related.
So it's should I make it proposed?
Yes,
let's make it proposed.
The document open.
Excellent.
Yeah, so anything else you want to propose now? Go ahead and
I'm willing to withdraw this one because I think it's less urgent. I think these two are important, 19 and 11, and it's my priority as well.
I'm for 11, the one Stephen's suggesting.
21, I argue, is not a new case.
Is 11?
Not.
Go ahead. Is 11 a? Is it multiple use cases, or am I just reading into it too far?
The problem is
it kind of introduces several concepts, right? Negation.
No, it doesn't. It only it reuses claim and negation, which both of them have been set as completed. It simply models the negation relation, basically.
Okay.
Simply means, like, what does it mean if 2 claims are equivalent and there's both equivalence and negation relations? Are there constraints that overlap? Like, if they are the same, does it mean What does that mean? In which cases is the model correct and incorrect? What does the model need to enforce or not enforce?
Yeah, I just forgotten that we had negation in there because I was so focused on the other stuff. So, yeah. So I don't have an opinion on which of these three to do next.
It comes up again with support and oppose because it's the same story. A similar, very convoluted phrasing will happen for support and oppose.
And there's another case there, which is double negation is equivalent to equivalence. Double negation entails equivalence. If we believe in the excluded middle, I don't know if we want that.
But is it clear what's written there? I haven't even read it in ages. I don't even know why it's framed correctly.
11. No, it's framed correctly as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
If A is equivalent to B, B is negation of C, then A is also negation of C. That's what I read, and I think that's correct. Negation propagates to the equivalence class defined by equivalence.
Yeah, and if we decide then to do this, which we haven't yet, by the way, then my question will be in terms of the model, like what different states can a model present and how should the model optimally be transformed so that it's less likely to represent incorrect states? Or we just add a lot of notes to these relations that we've been doing, but I really don't think that's maintainable.
That's a question, right? Is which constraints is it possible to express in the model? Which constraints is it impossible to express in the model? For me, in the model, I worry more about expressing what can be expressed than about expressing constraints at the model level. Sometimes it's possible to express constraints at the model level, sometimes not. In my experience, it's often makes the model overly complicated to express all constraints.
So I would argue the opposite. I think a model which cannot misrepresent things, I would call a simpler model, because then you don't need to write tests. If you follow test-driven development, then you don't need to write tests to verify that the model is correct. The model simply cannot be used incorrectly because of the nature how it's modeled. That's why I believe in a good model is a model that cannot be used incorrectly and that requires ideally the least amount of operations for common operations on it. That's my definition of a good model.
I completely support Stephen here. But did we decide on the requirement already?
No, we haven't.
Yeah, the thing that confuses me about this is, like, while I fully agree with the intent of it, I don't know how to model something like this. I don't see it working its way into the model. I see it's just standing alone as a rule. We could put it as a note and consider ourselves done. But are you thinking of it affecting the model somehow?
I do have. That's why I don't model claims as single sentences. I model equivalence as a set of sentences. That's why I do that, because that groups them together.
Yeah, but
Yep. No, he's right. I mean, that's a see.
My problem with that is it doesn't seem to take into account how these things occur as a use pattern, right?
As a what?
As a use pattern, right?
What is it?
Here's an example using users, right? Someone goes in and says the table is made of wood, right? Somebody goes in elsewhere and maybe isn't even looking at that and puts in their own claim, the table is not made of wood, right? And somebody goes and says, oh, this is the negation of that, right? And you have this relationship of the negation. One claim is the negation of another. You have two sentences, right? And another one goes and enters, oh, this is a wooden table. Now you have three sentences floating around that are each claims in the system. It's not a claim with multiple sentences automatically. At some point, somebody says, oh, yeah. You know what? These are all related. Let's merge them, or let's do something that makes them, collapses this into a claim with a set of sentences. It didn't happen. Huh?
But
What's the exact
Timothy,
use case? As a
are you
user, you
arguing
want
against
to...
the proposal right now?
Yeah, maybe let's do that first, but it sounds like we actually started on 11. What are the other two? 19?
Well, I'm still discussing 11 as a proposal because I don't understand how it works into the model, right?
Well, yes,
we can go ahead and adopt 11 if we have to go into it. Let's adopt 11. We can back it out. Does anybody else not want to go down this conversation and would rather do 19 or 21?
I would like to have a bit of a process discussion because it's interesting. I think it's interesting and important. I see your point now, Stephen, and I agree, but I think there's often many models to a set of constraints, and saying that, and it may be worth discussing alternative models. Right now we're doing one model because we're going for the simplest model, but there's the possibility that another model represents something better. And I think that's a valid part of the process, saying, hey, I can handle those use cases better with this model than another, which is not here something about there's a use case that this model doesn't handle, but there's a use case that this model doesn't handle well. We're getting into qualitative and subjective and elegance considerations, which I think is important to do.
I always argued you can have multiple models.
Yeah, no, and I'm not arguing against you, but I'm saying as a process reflection, what you want to introduce, I don't think you can purely argue it as this is about following constraints. It's about following constraints in a efficient, elegant, safe way, or whatever other aspects, right? It's you're arguing for other considerations than just following the use cases. And I think that's a valid thing to do. But I'm saying it's an alteration, it's an amendment to the process.
This is a use case.
I think it's a good one.
I mean, well, is it? I don't know. None of these are, in my opinion, as I expressed last time, suitable user stories. I really want blah, 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 SAX. I want...
I agree. They're desiderata, they're requirements, they're not user stories. I agree totally.
If you do that, then it will become a lot more clear that some of these user stories indeed might need different models to host them, which is my whole discussion that actually I think we're mixing up two bounded contexts here. One of them is more like entry and the other one is a simulation, like what's the resulting argument model once you've actually took all of that input. I'm mostly interested in the resulting argument model, what I call argument modeling, where it's taken for granted if claim A supports claim B. That has been decided. That's the thing that's being modeled. And in a model like that, I think modeling equivalence is best modeled as a set of sentences. And yes, there are other use cases where you might want to curate that. You might want to start aggregating stuff from the web, like all different claims, and then somehow aggregate all of that into one model. Yes, I agree. A model where you have separate claims and then you start linking to each other as negations is a better model for that process. My point is that's a different bounded context.
Yeah.
If what we're discussing right now is the resulting model, that the thing, the canonical model, like after we have decided what the best way to represent an argument is, I think equivalence is best stored as a set of sentences.
Okay, no. We're way off the rails on the process. I'm rejecting 11 again. And
we should actually go there and model it and then talk about it instead of having this theoretic discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just real quick. So Marc Antoine was saying a change to the process, but I understand that really is and has always kind of been the process, is that when you introduce a new use case, people can say, okay, here's the different ways I would want to model it, and one of those models could be a complete change of the current model. So it could be like moving everything out from separate units into a consolidated thing, and we'd have 2 or 3 proposed, and then we as a group arm wrestle, and whoever's stronger gets the
but sometimes the distinction will be in other use cases, but then maybe it's not the right use case to introduce the change. Fair enough.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we can try to model it as an incremental change to this model, or we can try to make a totally different model as Stephen is proposing. And I think that's a valid process.
Yeah, and I don't think it would be bad even to have 2 or 3 competing kind of models growing at the same time.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. There can be many models at this point.
So let's please go there and make Steven's
Let's
model,
do it.
because I want to see it.
I agree. So do I create a Steven model here?
Can be in the same document. Just
I mean, the problem is that the Steven model is going to include use cases that haven't been accepted, that haven't been treated. Yes.
Which use cases does it also include that aren't set to completed right now and is now trying to be resolved with proposed 11? I don't see it.
Even the current model includes use cases that we haven't agreed on.
Is that so?
No, the question marks.
I guess you could come up with stuff that's not written down here.
Well, it may incidentally, but the question is, have we added something to it that is in there that doesn't have anything to do with the so far proposed use cases? And we don't. I don't even know that we need a third model until someone, I mean, we don't even need Steven's model until someone really argues against it. So I don't know, unless Tim has a competing model, let's adapt the model based on Steven's suggestion, and then someone can propose a separate one.
Okay, I think here's what I propose. Let Tim propose a way to adapt his model to claim 11, and let Steven propose a model for how he would model claim 11, and then let's compare the models. Is that okay?
Yeah. And then I would also argue, because the only real way to compare one model against the other is with actual data. Because as I said, for me, a good model is one where executing a use case requires the least amount of operations. If with just having some arrows and boxes, you're not going to be able to see that. You need to be your own compiler. I'm doing that in my head, which is why I don't like this model. But to really see it, you need actual data represented in these models.
So maybe that's our homework for Tuesday, because we're coming close to the hour, by the way. So let's just finish adding this to Tim's model and trying to capture your model. How's that? So Tim, do you know how to capture claim 11 in your in the incremental model we started building?
Requirement 11. No,
just as a note?
Yeah, just as a note, because there's no
but what does that note
functional
imply?
Use of that, right?
What does the note mean? Are you going to add the relation to all of the equivalent statements, or if there's any, then you do a search, and that means that how do you use this model?
As far as I understand, the nodes represent runtime constraint checking.
Basically, yeah. And there's no use of equivalence or negation. So there's no, implications of how it should be designed or handled in runtime. It's kind of like, okay, A is a negation of C. Okay. No. I mean, if we throw in scoring, then we start to say, once we start talking about, for example, scoring use cases, there is an implication there that A is a negation, because we have to define the negation means the score is the inverse or something like that, right? Negation starts to have meaning. Right now, negation doesn't have meaning.
You are right there that I'm indeed hinting at requirements that aren't there yet, because if you see the use case that I wrote to introduce negation, which is not what we did, because we totally decided to skip the so that part. I wrote, as a user, I want to assert the claims a negation of another claim in my argumentation, so that in my multi argumentation underlying arguments are shared. So indeed, for me, the main reason for negations are the so that all the underlying arguments are shared. And then you know why, if one claim is equivalent of another claim, that you actually do want to see the same underlying arguments. That's the reason. And then the question is, how do you do that at runtime using this model versus how do you do that at runtime using my model?
Right, but we haven't gotten there yet, which is why I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah, what is the note? Note syntax. Sorry, I'll be there shortly.
I should probably add to the list something along the lines of, as a user, I want to see all supporting. This is going to be another complex one, which is right.
Which is fine, I think.
Yes. It's fine, but I think the complex ones get easier and easier to define when they're based on a simpler previous one. For example, the one on 19. A claim is created to oppose the support of one claim for another claim. makes sense as the next step from the one before it, which was that somebody made a claim in support of another claim. And then somebody added a claim. It gets easier to visualize the complex things when they're just one step away from something you just did.
Yeah, but I would argue if we would have had more natural user stories, because you keep arguing from a use case perspective, I don't think the negation use case was a good use case at all in hindsight. Because if you model it as an actual user story with the so that, then you instantly see that the whole notion of negation is primarily introduced for claim reuse. So you can see all the same underlying arguments. We totally don't have that yet right now.
Well, we can take it out.
No, but then, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'll try to write it up as another lengthy constraint.
Okay, I'm having a problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it easier to put in another lengthy constraint, or is there another area you'd want to focus on? We just want to remove negation.
I would really like to follow a much simpler path to getting all these defined, which is just always the next logical conclusion of adding, right? We've spent the last 10 minutes ground to a halt because we're worried about all the things that weren't put in again, rather than just saying, okay, we got the one where they did support, let's do the one where they oppose, and let's do the one where they oppose the support of something. Those are all easy for us to throw in there. But we froze here because all of a sudden we're worried about.
I don't think we're frozen. I'm frozen because I'm realizing there's a limitation of PUML that it doesn't like all these associations of association. So it cannot have more than 2 associations.
I agree with plenty UML. I also don't like them.
Yeah. So
does not compute.
Does not compute. Yeah. It's true that it makes the diagram a bit heavy. So that's enough. But I think let's do the work of capturing your diagram. It's still worth doing.
By your, you mean mine?
Yeah, what you're proposing. You're proposing an alternate model. Let's capture it.
So I would say claim has a set of equivalent sentences.
Okay, how do you call that set?
Sentences, simply I would say.
Sentences, okay.
For now, it's the equivalent. And that the note there is implied that all of these sentences are equivalent.
Oh, okay, one second. Is it an attribute of the claim or?
It's an attribute, yeah.
Okay, so I could just call it sentences like this. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that removes one many-to-many relationship, because right now you just have objects with sentences within them, which models equivalence. Negation, I simply model as, that's where what I actually have implemented now is different from, I think, where I want to be. That's an interesting one. There's 2 ways. You either have the thing we call a debate before, something like that, which basically stores 2 claims, a claim and its negation. Or you can, for now, just do that a claim can be the negation of another claim. Let's do it like that for now.
Or you store another set in the claim, which is the sentences of the negation.
Yeah, but then it becomes difficult, because then you have an index point. Yeah, I wouldn't model it like that. For now, I would simply say the same way we did it in the other model.
That one.
Yes.
I think the one with the storing the negation, like the claim and its negation in the same object, solves a lot of relation constraints.
No, it creates.
That's what I do, but I think what we're lacking there is a good name for that, and we've always been lacking a good name for that. But that's what I do.
Negation sentences.
It creates, Felix. It creates a lot of complexity when you're pointing to a claim. Are you pointing to the claim or its negation? You need an extra Boolean.
I don't think you need an extra Boolean. You know you're always pointing to it. Now, but that means you can't point to its negation.
If you put the set of negations in the claim, that means whenever you're pointing to the claim, you have to specify which one you're pointing to.
But the main reason actually why you would want to put them in the same one is exactly when you want to add supporting and opposing, because once you start modeling these constraints, and again, we can start doing it with like use case per use case per use case, but you want all of the supporting models of one claim to be the opposing models of its negation. And if you're saying you want to share on all the underlying statements, it starts making sense to simply within a claim have the entire set of underlying statements that are shared with both the negation. That's where that comes in.
So I would,
but let's go to the support oppose instead of going into negation. Like let's have negation the old style. If you want, I can have, I'll put it as a comment for now that we're undecided about this.
Yeah, that's fine.
But no, we're capturing Stephen's model.
I understand, but we're capturing Stephen's model. Stephen's model could be gotten to by adding use cases. That's like, as process manager here, is what's frustrating me, is you're essentially trying to skip, you're once again trying to fast forward to get to something that you want, when the proper way to do it is to create the use cases that get there.
No,
and adding nodes, keep adding all these use cases I bring up, Timothy, as nodes to a model, and every node is loosely translates to, I don't know.
Oh, but your model does not support a use case.
I think it does.
Or is it rather, it's not the solution. It does not support the negation relationship, right?
How so?
There is the negation relationship use cases. Somebody created a claim, somebody else created a separate claim.
But there's a magic word.
And then somebody else said those two claims, one of those claims is the negation of the other claim.
No, I think it supports that. It's just how you implement it. It's different.
Yeah.
It's a separate claim, and then you delete that claim and you add that sentence to the thing. It's just.
I think let's finish the model to see if it's a fast forward or not. For me, it's clear that Stephen is trying to answer the case 11 with a new model. And I think let's see how much he has to do to handle the new model. It's not a fast forward. 11 was declared. And he's saying, I'm not satisfied with that model. I want to propose a new model. I think that's a valid process. If you cannot do that, then the process doesn't work. But I understand your point that it has to be based on a use case. The use case was proposed.
All right. So there is no
we're almost there, by the way.
No, I understand. You're saying that then what happens is automatically anytime somebody creates an equivalence relationship or creates a negation relationship, it collapses into one instantly.
Yeah, because that's the argument model. If you're saying they are equivalent, why don't you model them as equivalent? And the reason you're saying we shouldn't do it like that is because somebody else might come in and say they're not equivalent. And that's where my argument always comes in. That's a separate bounded context, which I before called curation. That we also want to support that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is where I disagree with you, because it's the question that
it's not. Yeah.
Do we, the question was asked earlier today, do we want to model invalid arguments? It's the same thing. Do we want to model intermediate states of that process? And I see why you think it's a distinct bounded model, and I can accept it. But I'm saying, and where we two disagree is, do we think there's value in modeling the end result independently of the intermediate state, or vice versa? And I believe that the end result is always too partial to be of independent value. That's my belief. It's a claim.
I think you're over extrapolating on what I said, and either way, we don't need to go into the discussion now. If you want to finish this model here, all you need to do
Let's
is
finish the model. I think there's value
finish
in finishing the model.
Finish the model. I gotta go, but let's finish the model quickly.
Yeah, that has value, no question.
All you need to add is underlying arguments. An argument is a claim either supporting or opposing another claim. So you do need to add an argument thing, which has a supporting and opposing Boolean.
Okay.
So it has a claim and a relation type, either supporting or opposing, and then a claim simply points to arguments, and that's it. Then you have most of the use cases and constraints the way that I would have to bring them up with like 5, 6, 7 new use cases in the traditional process. Which I can also try to do. But I still don't see, Timothy, why you say that.
So, sorry, did I capture it well so far?
Argument is no claim here?
I would say an argument has two attributes. One is a claim, and the other attribute is a relation, which is either opposing or supporting.
Yeah, that's opposes.
Okay.
Boolean, and the relation argument has a claim.
Yes, and then a claim has many arguments, and that's it.
The claim, yeah, good point. That way? Is that what you meant?
Yes, I think so. I don't know the syntax by heart.
Look at the diagram.
At the diagram level.
And
the negation is probably 1-to-1 in that case.
Isn't it on the wrong? Yes. Yeah.
No, there's no relation. Well, there's no negation relationship between claims.
Yes, there is.
Oh, because you got rid of the string negations.
Well, it's one or the other. So I left this one.
Right.
In this case,
Okay.
if you have the
Right.
negation relation is gone. That's true.
So you want me to get rid of that?
Yeah, because you have the you commented it out. Yeah, just add for now the array of negations.
Okay.
It's closer to how I would do it. It's not how I would finally do it, but one step.
Okay, but then I would argue you need another Boolean in the argument to say whether you're opposing or supporting the claim or its negation.
No,
That's where you add a note.
Yeah, right.
That's where I would argue that's where you add a note.
Oh, yeah, or
a note? How? Because I don't know. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. If an argument, what you're saying.
If you support the normal, you always oppose the other form. That the whole thing is the argument.
I don't think you need a note. I mean, it's you need it on the
what you're
relationship
saying.
from argument to its claim.
Listen to
You
the
need another-
equivalence Stephen is
Yeah, do I
proposing.
believe in that equivalence? Let me think about it. I now understand the equivalence. Let me think about whether I believe it or not. But maybe that's a separate conversation.
Stephen is basically saying, if an argument supports the base
The claim, it's opposing the
and not-
negation, and if it
Yeah.
it's
supports the
opposing
negation, it's
right?
opposing
That's
the
what you're
claim.
saying.
that's my assumption in my
That is,
model
and
as
that's
well.
maybe the use case that needs to be added to the list so we can see how to model that in the other model.
So maybe this is not about opposes, is
Relation.
direct or negation.
What? No, it's
So supports direct.
the relation to the main form of
It
the
depends
sentences array.
Depends on if it relates to the sentences or the negation.
Yeah, supports negation. Let me. How's that?
Yes. Yeah, that's clear. I think.
I don't.
Some
I
of
don't.
us.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I don't know. I guess looking at this, I'm not sure which one is what we used to call target and which one is the base claim in that association.
We
Which
don't
one's
have
supporting
premises.
the other?
Premises are not there yet. We just have the argument supports or opposes another claim. I'm saying I'm for this, I'm against this. We don't have the premises yet, and we don't have the logical link or any of that, which is fine. It's
What is
one
missing?
stage.
What is missing is not the target. The target is clear.
Yeah.
It's the source. Like, are you using the
Yeah.
normal form or the negation of the source? That is missing in arguments.
All right, but that is in our use case, right?
Not yet.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't think.
Yeah.
That's where
I
I
don't-
do agree with Tim with
Okay,
jumping
I guess
away.
I don't
think-
see a use case that fits
There's no
this
use
model.
case yet.
What?
What?
I think it's just
What's,
isomorphic.
I gotta get
value
going.
does- yeah.
Can we
Move it to next
return to
week.
this next week? I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
I think all the use cases so far fit that model.
Use case 11 next week, or I see a
Well, it's
conclusion
Mark
that,
Antoine.
that's resolved with the note for now, or what's the conclusion there?
I think we leave both models and we discuss further.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need to discuss further.
Let's leave it
clearly.
open
I think,
and go in there with fresh minds.
yes, I approve. I
Okay.
wanted it to be captured. Now let's argue it out next week.
okay.
See you next
I'm gonna
week.
boot everyone.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.